Hello everybody, my name is Matt. This video is for the Lucid Dreaming Firehose, part of the internal library. And I was originally going to do this series kind of as a scripted, video part where everything was, edited just so, and had me kind of presenting it in a very formal and linear way. And I did that, but I wasn't a huge fan of it, and I feel like I'm probably not going to do videos like that. It felt stilted and a little corny to me, honestly, which, some people do it really well, but I felt like I was trying to be a persona rather than me just talking off the cuff like I'm doing now and like I will be doing for this particular stream. So what I'm going to do is just record a long stream of all this information, and I have some handy dandy notes here that I'll go through, and then at the end I'll publish both streams, or one stream depending on how long it is, and then I'll just clip it up and separate into intelligible sections from that point. But yeah, this is my plan. My favorite podcasters, speakers, presenters are usually very long-winded windbaggers, which I have been known to do as well. So I think I'm just going to follow in their footsteps and do the same thing instead of having it be this very polished and edited clip section of many things woven together. Those are great. I'm a fan of those. I'm not that good at those. So I got my water, keep my throat nice and moist, hydrated for a lot of talking. So this is the Lucid Dreaming Firehose. Lucid Dreaming Firehose, all about lucid dreaming, things you need to know, things, mindsets, techniques you're going to want to have in place. Of the skills that I know about, I am the most qualified to talk about this one because I am the most obsessed with this skill out of any other skill that I have ever gotten into. Why is it a fire hose? It's because it's a fire hose in the sense that I'm just going to be throwing a bunch of stuff at you. It's not going to have a lot of backstory, a lot of science, a lot of history, a lot of not neuroscience, things that you should study and could study if you were interested, which are great topics, but this is just to get you started so you have it all mapped out in front of you. Straightforward, actionable, lots of good stuff. So I really want to just kind of give you a scattershot of a bunch of different cans you could open and get into yourself. I'll have resources at the end. You can explore those as well. I've got into them myself, and they'll fill in all the gaps for you. So we'll start with a little bit of a preamble about dedication. Lucid dreaming isn't something that you can really do a lot of unless you prioritize it pretty heavily. You need time and focus and sacrifice of your attention and of your late night hours specifically. However your sleep quality is now, it's going to have to get better. Lucid dreaming is really, really dependent on a lot of sleep. Like sufficient in the sense of maybe 8 hours a night on average. If you're not getting that, then this practice will be harder for you. And honestly, I would recommend not so much sleeping longer, but allowing more time around your sleep, because there's going to be techniques that require you to wake up, move around, get back in bed, and those take time. And you don't want to feel like you're chasing the clock the whole time, because that just makes it stressful, and you start worrying about the future, which pulls you out of the now, which pulls you out of lucidity. So if you're not sleeping well, or if you're not sleeping very long, then that needs to be fixed. And I will have another video on sleep hygiene, which will be me expressing a long list of things in a document that I made for a friend of mine who was having trouble sleeping. So be on the lookout for that. It'll probably be linked below. Maybe it'll pop up in the corner when I figure out how to edit videos to do that part, which is super cool. What got me into lucid dreaming, you may wonder. My first lucid dream was sort of lucid. I'll get into a concept later. It was kind of half lucid. I was a small child. I was probably 4 or 5, and I kept having this dream where I would leave my house in the middle of the night, and there's this laundromat down the street from the house I lived in. And there was this big cow head that was kind of like a trophy head that was on the top of it. It wasn't actually there in waking life, but it was there in my dream. And it was there at night, and I would walk up to it, and then it would yell orders at me. It would tell me to do jumping jacks, or go run around the block several times, or go move things from house to house. Just kind of random, totally pointless tasks that it would have me do. And it was terrifying because it was this big yelling cow head that freaked me out as a small child. And as I got a little bit older, I think I had that dream maybe half a dozen times. And there was this one moment where I realized that I was dreaming and I'd finished the last task, and I kind of gave him this eyebrow, and I was like, this is some bullshit, more or less, as the 5-year-old version of that sentiment. And basically told him, I'm done with this, can I go home now? Because this is stupid and pointless. And my little act of rebellion there against the tyranny of the cowhead, I saw his eyes go like that, and then he just like absorbed and vanished, and I never had that dream again since then. So that was my first like straightforward semi-lucid dream where I took advantage of my knowledge of the situation and resolved whatever conflict was going on psychologically at that time. But throughout the years, I'd had a lot of dreams as a kid, what lots of kids do, that had strange implications about my mind and about what it means to be conscious versus unconscious. But I didn't really discover lucid dreaming as a practice until I was probably 18 or 19. I had been doing a lot of psychedelics, definitely too many, and my mind started to stretch quite a bit, and lucid dreaming, ironically enough, became a sort of endogenous psychedelic reservoir for me that I could go into every night and kind of enter that same state of mind without needing to deal with what we call unreliable drug dealers, who you never know if they're what they're bringing around. So lucid dreaming became a way to endogenously create that ability for me to enter that space and trip out all night, any night, if I wanted to, assuming I had the discipline. But it also was a way for me to start repairing some of the damage I had done to my mind. I'm not a believer that psychedelics damage the brain in any kind of physiological sense that is really notable. I mean, I guess there's conflicting evidence on that, but I'm a big fan of MAPS, and I'm a big fan of their research that psychedelics are more or less physically safe for the brain, but that doesn't mean they're mentally safe, assuming you're using them in places that are definitely not recommended. So set and setting, as a phrase that is common in the psychedelic community, I was not using those very well. I was often entering into a bad mindset, and rarely was I in a very healthy setting, and it ended up me doing a lot of serious, I would almost argue, psychiatric damage to my mind through psychedelics. So lucid dreaming was a way for me to step out of that dependency and kind of enter into that same fascination with the strange, trippy, flexible part of my mind without any kind of psychopharmacological assistance. And the biggest catalyst, though, which actually got me to pick up a book, which was really fantastic, is I was studying music theory at my local community college, and I kept having musical dreams, and those dreams were often full of fantastic melodies and harmonies and things that I could actually sort of identify what was going on, but I would wake up and I wouldn't be able to remember or articulate them very well. So what I wanted to do was become more or less a master of lucid dreaming, so that I could go into the dream and get my inspiration of what I was hearing, and then come out of the dream and then write down the musical inspiration. And I did that a few times. It was successful. It's hard to do because you have to wake up once you hear the melody, and then sometimes it's hard to just yank yourself awake without falling into a spiral of false awakenings, which we'll get into later. That's a fun one. But that was what got me into studying lucid dreaming as a practice and as a formal methodology for meditation and visualization and psychic diving and whatnot. So that's what got me into it. So the next thing we'll do is we'll start talking about kind of some basic fundamental facts about lucid dreaming and how it's used and why it's used and all of that. So we'll call that the who, what, when, where, and why of lucid dreaming, and we'll go through them in that order. So the who of lucid dreaming. Who is very simple. It's you that's going to be lucid dreaming. You will be practicing this, hopefully fully hydrated. You'll be practicing this skill daily if you really want to get into it. It is a daily practice, and it's not just daily as in once a day. It's an all-day thing. You're cultivating a sense of awareness of what's happening around you, what's happening in your mind, and being on the lookout for all sorts of novelties and anomalies, because that will cue you into dreaming. But who is also an interesting question, because who are you? to ask proverbial platitudinous questions. I don't think there's a very good answer to that question. When you really get into deep Buddhist introspection, who you are becomes a very, very difficult question to really gain a lot of traction on. And lucid dreaming is only going to make that question harder to answer, because once you get into your dreams and you realize that your dreams are not your dreams, but are dreams that you're in, then you might start to reshape the way you view yourself. And the word self might just take a new meaning that is hard to describe, and you might just need to find recourse in writings that have been around for thousands of years that basically agree, you're right, it's a very hard question, good luck, keep meditating. That's where I've gotten to at this point, and I don't see it going the other way anytime soon. That's the who. The what is what to do and what you can do in lucid dreaming. That is something we'll get into a little bit later, but I do want to define lucid dreaming very specifically. Lucid dreaming, it's simply being aware that you're dreaming while it's happening. So it's not dream control, that's a different skill. That's the ability to consciously move things around and make things happen in your dreams. That's different, that's dream control. Kind of overrated in my opinion, but it's something you can play with, it's something you should play with, because it's, it's a faculty of your mind. But simply being aware that you're in the dream doesn't mean you'll be able to do anything that you think you can or should be able to do. It's actually quite a common misconception that dream control and dream lucidity are synonymous. And that's something I had to learn the hard way, and that's something many people learn the hard way. So don't go into lucid dreaming thinking that you'll just be, developing massive utopian cities of your imagination, because maybe you can, but I certainly couldn't, and I don't think most people have that skill. Another common misconception about lucidity is that it's an on or an off switch, like you either are or you're not, and it's not, in my experience, it's not really like that. It's kind of a gradient. You can be sort of half aware of it. You can be aware of it and then not aware of it and then aware of it again and not, or you can even be aware of it but still acting like you're not aware of it. So it's like you're still wrapped up in the drama of the dream, but not, you still know it's a dream at the back of your head, so that your fear, if there's something scary going on, is sort of is checked by this subtle awareness that you're gonna wake up in 30 minutes anyway, so you don't really have to freak out, and so you can actually continue with the narrative. It's like watching a scary movie. You're freaked out, but it's not like you don't know it's a movie. And if someone were to tap you on the shoulder and say, chill bro, your heart rate's pretty high, you know this is a movie, right? You'd be like, I know, but the point is that I almost don't know. So you get the sensations. So we did who, we did what, when. So when is obviously nighttime is the bulk of it. That's where you'll be doing it, but also throughout your day. There's a lot of things you can do throughout your day to add to your lucid dreaming. It's not so much a skill that you practice and then put away. It's really something, it's like meditation, or it's like good posture, or it's like healthy breathing through your nose and whatnot. These are things that you want to instantiate in your daily life, so much so that it becomes a default, which I do believe is possible. And if you believe the more grand claims of some of these dream masters out there, be them Western scientists or meditators of all over the world, about what the dreaming state can become, I do think it can be a default state. And not being aware of our dreams, I think one could say it should be that way. Some people question the safety, or maybe the appropriateness, I guess you could say, of being aware of your dreams. Like they see it as infringing on some kind of unconscious processing that needs to happen. And there might be some wisdom in there, maybe they're right. But I, for one, like to know that I'm dreaming when I'm dreaming, because then I can actually process things more effectively. It's kind of like metaphor of unweaving the rainbow, if you've heard that phrase of, well, do you really want to know how a rainbow is made? I mean, wouldn't that kind of ruin it if you know how it's made? And it's like, no, that makes it cooler, because it's still beautiful, or maybe a recipe is an even better one, because simply knowing what ingredients are in something, I think, makes food taste better, because then you can look for it. So that's the when. The where is, once again, the obvious answer is in your bed or wherever you sleep, but not just there. You'll be practicing this all throughout your day, not just in your bed. And I really think that, like I said before, it's something you want to embody as opposed to do. It's a way of being that you become, and that is how I would approach there. The why of lucid dreaming. So there's six six reasons why you would want to get into lucid dreaming, 6 basic categories, and those are fun, fantasy, problem solving, both intellectual and interpersonal. There's rehearsal, there is nightmares and dealing with them, and then the final one is, I've actually lumped them together, is self-therapy and spiritual transformation. I see those as more or less synonymous. We'll get into that later. So that's going to be the what and why of lucid dreaming when we get in there. But before we even get anywhere close to that, there's preliminary skills that have to be in place first, because lucid dreaming is all about 2 primary skills. There's becoming aware that you're dreaming, and then there's what do I do once I'm there. Those are 2 different things. You can be good at one and not good at the other one, and if you are only good at one, then you will have trouble with lucid dreaming. I have gone from being good at one to just the other. I've been good at knowing I'm dreaming, but bad at the improv part where you actually go do stuff, and I've been good at knowing what to do when I'm there, but bad at actually recognizing the dream, and they both completely derail the point of the practice. So there's different skills for each, different practices. I will give you all of those for both. So the very first thing is becoming aware, and in order to become aware, you need your mind to prioritize the need to pay attention to dreams. And a lot of people just forget their dreams. They say, oh, I don't have dreams. Very likely you do. It would be incredibly surprising if you never went through REM periods during your sleep. They're pretty crucial for memory consolidation and for general psychological well-being. REM periods being interrupted definitely correlates with people not being very happy and not functioning very well. So unless you're in the tiny, tiny minority of people with some kind of what I imagine would be called a neurological disorder, you dream, you just don't remember them. And you can remember them, you just have to prioritize your mind. You have to get your mind to prioritize remembering them, because you have to think that they're important enough to actually keep them throughout the night. So the first and best way to do that is a dream journal. A dream journal is basically going to be any kind of notebook. It can be something as simple as a notebook that you dedicate for this practice solely for this, not for anything else. If you have lots of journals, pick one that you like looking at. Make sure it's only for dreams. You're going to keep it by your bed. You're going to make sure it's something that you use only for this purpose and that you can easily access at all points of the night. You can get a pen that lights up. I have a special pen that does that, but it's in the bag at the moment. You can find, just look up light up pens. It's pretty cool. When you press on the ink, the light illuminates, so you don't have to turn the light on, which might upset your sleeping schedule or your sleeping partner next to you. Good luck with that part. And you get a dream journal. You want to keep it accessible. And when you wake up from a dream, regardless of how much detail there is, even if it's just like a shade of like, oh, this person was there, or I have this emotion, or I think I was outside, it doesn't matter how minimal it is. As soon as you wake up, lay still, don't move, and then verbally go through, either in your head or out loud, what you experienced in the dream. If you go through in your head, then it's quieter, and so you won't disturb anyone else in the room with you if you happen to not sleep alone. But if you're only going through in your head, you might actually put yourself back to sleep, because that kind of monologuing, especially about a dream, will often put you right back to sleep. So I think it's helpful to speak out loud, and you just, hopefully it won't be too much of a disturbance, because if you're getting up several times throughout the night to record dreams, you're going to bug people. That's just the nature of lucid dreaming. So good luck with that part. If you do say the entire dream out loud, say it in present tense. It's a really helpful tip. So instead of saying something like, I dreamed that I was walking and I climbed a tree and picked an apple, you would say, I'm walking and I climb a tree and I pick an apple. It's all happening in real time, present tense, because that will instill a sense of being in the now, which is what lucid dreaming is all about, is being aware that you're dreaming as you're dreaming, not after you're dreaming. So present tense, very helpful in that sense. So you wake up, don't move, you verbally go through the dream, either in your head or verbally out loud. You get the memory firmly in place as if you were going to be writing it, and then you get up and then you just write basically as fast as you can legibly to get it all out, because the dream will start vanishing pretty fast. And as soon as you get it all done, focus on sensory things. As you do this more and more, you will get longer and longer dreams. My first one was about 3 lines in my first dream journal, and my second one, 5 or 6 lines. My maybe 50th one was like 10 pages. Like it gets absurd how long and vivid these stories get, and it also depends on how indulgent you are as a writer. I'm a gabber, so I tend to go on. You're going to get to a point where you might have to be a little discerning about what you write down. So if you are cutting out details for the sake of time, limit it to sensory stuff. What did you see? What did you smell? What did you hear? All of that. Conversations, especially the dialogue of conversations, that's really important. Changes in emotions, things that affect you, things that really mess with your affect is really important to notice, because these will guide all of your interpreting of your dreams if you choose to go down that route later, which I would recommend. So once you do that, you've written it all down, then you're going to want to give it a fun date and a title, and make it a wacky title if you want to kind of give yourself something to look forward to reading later. And then you're done with that particular iteration of dream journaling. Then you're going to meditate for maybe 5 minutes, kind of let the dream go, bring yourself back centered again. Sit up if you can, even if it's dark and you're tired. It's worth it to sit up, because you don't just fall right back asleep. You want to kind of get the mind going again, and then you're going to go back to sleep, and you're going to have another dream, very likely. The more sleep cycles you go throughout the night, the more dreams you'll be having, and the longer these dreams will be getting. And if you keep this up for a while, then you're going to start having so many long, vivid dreams that it's going to actually be quite a burden to write them all down. It's going to become an absurdly long and tedious practice. You're going to spend maybe an hour a night dreaming, or an hour a night writing down your dreams, which is too long. And you're going to be judicious with which dreams you write down. Maybe just write down your favorite one of the night. But there is a problem, and that is that people forget their dreams after they wake up and they go back to sleep. You might think, oh, there's no way I'm forgetting that one. That's an important one. But very likely you will. It's so rare to have a dream from the middle of the night actually make it to the end of the night. They just get scrubbed so fast. So don't make that rookie mistake. Just write them down, or at least part of them, basic notes, so you can expand later to trigger some memory. But the longer you take to write them down, the more likely they will be gone. And you might surprise yourself on how fast the dreams go away. You need dream recall for lucid dreaming, because you could actually be having lucid dreams and not remembering them. And that sounds ridiculous, at least it did to me when someone explained that to me. But it's true. I actually have had lucid dreams that I had forgotten about upon awakening, and then remembering them many hours later, and then laughing because I remembered that someone told me that could happen. So dream recall is its own skill. You need that to be there in place so that you can carry over your dreams into the future. So after you do all of your dream journaling there, very good, very good. Voice recording is a great alternative to writing. It's way faster. If you like to talk, as I do, then it's a chance for you to practice that. And one thing you will get, if you don't like the sound of your own voice recording, if the sound of your voice recorded bothers you, if you do this for a couple weeks and listen to them, you'll get over that so fast. It's because you just adapt to it. It's just the fact that it sounds different than what we're used to is what we don't like, but you'll adapt to it. So that's a great one. And the next thing I want to get into is, once you have maybe a dozen dreams or so, maybe more to work with, you're going to do dream mining. Dream mining is going through your records of your dreams from the journal, and you're going to be looking for what are called dream signs. Dream signs are anomalies, consistent anomalies that you see that to a discerning mind would clue you into the fact that you're actually dreaming. So there's common ones like physics is weird, or like text on a wall or on a sign is strange. Your phone's not working right, unless your phone doesn't work right anyway, in which case it's not that helpful of a sign. Your car might be driving weird, the brakes are responding in strange ways. Seeing people that aren't alive anymore, but they're alive in your dreams, that's a really common one. Your hair is different, or in my case, just having hair is a common sign. Your teeth falling out, that's a common one, that's a scarier one, but that's a very useful one because it's really emotive, so it can be an effective dream sign. Basically, you want to mine your dreams for anything that consistently shows you aspects of your dreams that are very different from normal reality. And the more of those that you get into, the more of those that you can identify and pinpoint, then the more of those you can specifically look for in your daily life and eventually through habit in your dreaming life to clue you into the fact that you're dreaming. A personal one that I have, which I really like, is strange and impossible musical instruments. So I'm talking like saxophones made of wood that have multiple chambers that like flap rhythmically as you play them, just would never work in real life. I had this one dream where Scotty McCreery, he was an American Idol winner from back in the day. He was in this this giant hamster wheel with like levers and like cables, and he would pull on them, and every time he'd pull one and shift his feet, then it would make this like full band sound of like Western slider guitar. And he was like, he looked exhausted, but he was playing it really well. And I was like, there's no way this is a dream, or there's no way this isn't a dream right now. And then he told me it was a dream. No, other way around. It was said, there's no way that this isn't a dream right now. And he said, no, this is absolutely waking reality. I promise you, don't be silly. And then I believed him, and then I woke up 10 minutes later. I was very mad at him because dream characters will actually lie to you and try to tell you that you're in fact awake. It's very strange. This gets back into what are dreams and who are you in them. It's very odd. So after you mine through all of your dreams, then you're going to turn them into reality tests. Reality testing is essentially you're developing what you could call an ontological skepticism about the nature of your reality around you. Are you dreaming right now or not? Now, you can ask yourself that, and then you can dismissively say, well, I know I'm not dreaming because I'm awake, duh. But the problem is that if you keep responding that way, then you will respond that way in your dreams. What you practice in waking life, you will do in your dreaming life. So if you don't actually wonder, if you don't kind of stop and consider the fact that you might be dreaming in a very genuine way, then your reality tests won't work and you'll never have a lucid dream. So you need to be genuinely curious if you're dreaming or not. And once you can develop that true openness and sincere wondering if you're dreaming or not, then your reality tests will be very simple. You just practice them throughout the day, and then you'll start doing them in your dreaming life. So the simplest reality test is really common. There's a couple of them. One of them is to look at text. So let's say you have a page with text on it. What you do is you look at the text, and then you look away, and then you look back. Now, if you're dreaming, it'll probably change. It very often does. But if it doesn't change, look away again and look back one more time. And at that point, on the third time around, if it still hasn't changed, you're probably awake. But if you keep practicing that, genuinely looking for it to change, in your dreams, you'll notice it very often does. It's a really, really common dream sign. Our minds aren't that capable of stabilizing. There's really, really subtle responsive details like that. I don't know why. I haven't heard a very good explanation for why that is, but seems to be the case. Another really common dream sign you can use is light switches. Much better. Light switches working very well in real life, thank God, because we have awesome electronics in our world. But in dreams, our light switches don't tend to work that well. They can be delayed, or they can be the wrong color, or they can just not turn off when they're supposed to. That's a really good one. So play with the light switches, and kind of when you do it, make sure that you're genuinely curious if the light switches are working properly or not. Maybe warn the people in the room if you're going to play with the light switch and see what's happening. You might get some strange reactions, or you can just do it anyway and see what happens. People can improvise off of that. That can be really fun. Then have a conversation about lucid dreaming, and then look at that. You're much more likely to have them at that point. That's actually the most effective thing I've found about lucid dreaming, is talking about lucid dreaming. That'll get into your head like no other. I'm sure I'll have one after making this video, simply because I'm talking about it so much. All right, the last test that I really like is jumping in the air, because we need excuses to do that anyway, because we are, mammals that like to be airborne for brief moments of time. But get up and just jump as high as you can, and then just see what it feels like. Because dreaming, it's so often that when you jump in a dream, the physics will be strange. You'll float, or you'll stay in the air. I mean, if you want to fly, which is the first thing most people do, you have to jump usually. And so just give that a try. Just jump in the air, see how it feels. Do that throughout your day. It's a good idea anyway, just because, might as well take advantage of these legs while we got them. And see how the physics feel around you. So another really, really fantastic method that I have used Once you have your dream journaling down, once you have your dream minding down, you have your dream signs clearly in place, you have your critical state testing of am I dreaming or not, you have that habituated. These are all good things. You're doing them throughout your day. Now, the next thing you want to do is prime the mind for lucid dreaming or for dreaming in general. The best method, hands down, that I have found for getting the mind really, really sharp in your dream state is called wake back to sleep. And that is very simple. What you do is after 6 hours or so of sleep, maybe 7.5 hours, depending on how much time you have and how long you like to sleep, you want to make sure you have at least one more solid sleep cycle before you do this. Still one more sleep cycle left to do before you do this. You're going to get up, and you're going to do something mentally stimulating but physically very mellow. You know, you don't want to get up and get your blood pumping. Don't exercise. If you're going to walk slowly, you know, breathe slowly. Don't make coffee. Don't do anything that would wake you up. Maybe read old dream journals. That's a fantastic way to prime this. Maybe read from this magazine, which I'll plug later. Robert Wagner's Lucid Dreaming Experience magazine. Fantastic thing to read in between your sleep cycles in order to prime your mind. What you're doing is that you're going to stay awake for about 30 minutes, although I found a full sleep cycle of 90 minutes is the most effective. And then you're going to go back to sleep. So you wake up, stimulate your mind, keep the body chill, 30 to 90 minutes, then go back to sleep. When you go back to sleep, chances are, very good chances, this is the most effective technique I've used, and it's all over the place if you look this up, it will skyrocket, at very least, the vividness of your dreams, but the lucidity as well. It's something about it, just getting the brain awake while keeping the body relaxed. It just gets that prefrontal cortex fired up, ready to go, all cylinders going, and lucid dreams become far more easy, natural, and it's more prevalent. It's a really, really great technique, and I was actually using this like 4 or 5 times a night at my most obsessed. That was like, you know, take me 12 hours to sleep all the way because I'd be waking up constantly and, you know, wandering around in the middle of the night, reading and meditating and playing a guitar and not sleeping. And it's very impractical. I wouldn't recommend that if you actually have things to do, but if you don't, there you go. But you could probably get away with it once or twice a week if you have a morning off or something, because you do need the time to do this. And I will go back again and reiterate, if you don't have the time or the proper sleep quality to do this, then you need to work on that first, because this practice does not work that well if you are underslept or stressed for time. If you have to just bolt awake and run to work, or whatever short time period you have to work with in the morning, if you are often in a rush in the morning, then it's going to just destroy your dream recall. And it's going to make writing down your dreams synonymous with getting stressed out that you're not getting as much sleep as you could. So there's some lifestyle shifting around there that is required, and I am in that boat with you. It's not always easy. Another technique is called active imagination. Carl Jung really put this technique on the map. It's basically conscious daydreaming, and that's simple enough. You know, you're daydreaming, but you're not just letting thoughts go wherever. You're kind of playing with them, so you engage them slightly. You want to strike this balance between this passive receiving of your dreams, or of your daydreams as they're happening, but also engaging them and leading them just so slightly. You know, like you're propositioning your daydreams and seeing if you can pull out details from them and then build off of them. It's really similar to lucid dreaming. It's just while you're awake. And honestly, the more you do that one, the more similar they'll start to be, to the point where your daydreams and your nighttime dreams might look more or less the same subjectively, which is really cool. After that, we have 5 senses meditation. So if you don't practice meditation, then lucid dreaming is going to be much harder. If you do practice meditation, I would add this to your meditation arsenal. It's pretty easy. It's just you focus on your 5 senses, spend a minute or 2 on each one. What do you see? You know, you see objects, you see color, you see distance, you see shading, you see shadow, you see reflectivity, all sorts of aspects of visuality. And then you have hearing, and you can hear distance, you can hear pitch and timbre and amplitude and all sorts of things. You deal with all 5 of your senses. That is a fantastic way to get the mind not just focused, but also engaged in your physical reality. Because if you want to stay lucid, and this is actually the next sort of sub-skill underneath becoming lucid, It's what I call locking in. Locking in is the ability to stay lucid once you become lucid. Very often people will realize they're dreaming and then they'll just kind of lose it. they'll get really excited and really rearing to go, and they'll run around like Archimedes going, "I'm dreaming, eureka!" and don't do that. Because chances are you'll just, what I call premature reanimation. You'll just wake up all over your bed, and it's not a good way to have consistent lucid dreams, because they'll last 5 to 10 seconds on average, and that is frustrating and also not good for your sleep. You want to be able to maintain your lucidity. The way to do that is what I call locking in. 5 senses meditation is crucial for that. So what you do is, as soon as you realize you're awake, poker face. No one knows. No one around you has any idea that you're dreaming. Only you do. You want to stay calm. Don't run around telling people that they're your dream characters and that you are the dream god. They'll get annoyed, I promise. And so you're going to keep a poker face. You're going to engage your 5 senses. So breathe the air, feel the ground beneath you or wherever you happen to be, and then engage something tactile. Pick up an object. If there's like a scarf, pick it up, feel it in your hands. If you're on a chair, hold the chair with your hands. Kind of become really in touch with your 5 senses, and then engage the world. And after a minute or so of that, then you will kind of stabilize the lucidity, and then it becomes much easier to just hang on to it. It's a skill that gets easier over time, but a lot of people skip that. And if you ever talk to people about lucid dreams, often they'll tell you that they just wake up as soon as they realize that they're lucid. And this is the way to avoid that, is to chill out, poker face, 5 senses, and engage tactile sensations in the dreaming world. It works very well. I would highly recommend that. All right. I will make another video later on why we have this premature reanimation response. There's a really interesting theory on why that's the case, and it's actually a self-protective mechanism, which is kind of hilarious and also kind of irritating, because if it's true, that means that we have potentially millions of years of unconscious instinctual programming working against our ability to become lucid. So I hope it's not true, but it would also explain a lot of what's going on. So maybe that video will pop up in the corner there. We'll find out. So before I go any further, I do want to just really harp on the importance of meditation, because it's such a it's like the most important thing I could recommend for anything ever in your life, no matter what it is. Like, unless your goal is to be pissed off and always worried about the future and regretting the past and to be embarrassed of things that no one ever actually cared about. If those are your goals, then don't meditate, because it'll ruin those goals. But if you actually just want to be peaceful, effective, linearly focused on things that are good for you, and on making sure that your world is all, as holistically healthy and complete as it can be, then you need to be taking time every day to sit, to let your body chill out, to let your mind chill out, and then just be aware of the circus in your mind. And you don't have to have a clear mind. You don't have to empty the thoughts. That's almost impossible very often. Just know that it's happening, and then just step out of it and just watch it. You're just like, look at all that. But I know it's not me. It's just the thoughts. So creating a sense of disidentification from the circus in the mind. And if you practice that every day, then this skill will be much, much easier. And I suspect many things in your life will get much, much easier, because that's been my experience, and that's been the experience of a lot of people all over the world for a very long time. So let's do that together. What to do while lucid. This is the fun part, because there's 6 categories that I really like to talk about in this case normally. Number 1 is fun, which is obvious. Lucid dreaming is incredibly fun. It can be kind of the most fun thing you can think of, because whatever you can think of, you can do. Imagine you can have any superpower you want. You can fly. You can create worlds. You can do anything that occurs to you. And as long as it can occur to you, then you can do it. It really is that simple. It's just, it requires the ability for it to occur to you, which is actually kind of a weird subtlety. Some things that are really fun and engaging are not actually as clear to us as we think they might be. So take drawing a hand, for example. I mean, if you were to draw a hand, you can imagine a hand, right? You can imagine it's got 5 fingers, it's got all the lines and the creases and whatnot, the joints, knuckles. it's not that hard to imagine. But if you ever try to draw one, you might be surprised at how little information of your visual memory of a hand translates to the page. And I don't think that's because we just have bad brain to hand transference. I think it's actually because our idea of a hand is much more low resolution than we realize. It's actually very simple in our mind, I would imagine. Like a picture on a computer desktop that is an icon of another picture that has much more resolution. That picture isn't actually that detailed, and if you could zoom in on it, it would look very little like the actual picture. I think that's what our imagination of a hand is. And so flying, for example, in dreams, while seemingly simple to imagine right now in your waking state for the quarter of a second that you imagine just taking off, it's actually very difficult sometimes because you have to squat down and jump, and then you have to feel the air going across you, and you have to see, three-dimensional space moving away, and you have to hear sounds differently, and it's actually quite a process to visualize flying sufficiently so that it's convincing to your dreaming mind. And so you might find it's actually a little bit trickier to do these kinds of things. But then, like anything else, they get easier with time, and they might actually be very easy. Sometimes you can just snap into it. It's very good. So have fun. That's the first category. Second category is fantasy. This one also is probably the second most common thing people do, and you can let your imagination run wild. Sexual fantasies or role-playing fantasies of like you want to be some kind of, if you want to be an astronaut, or if you want to be, this rock climber who has 6 arms, or whatever it is that you want to imagine just to go nuts with. You want to do your favorite childhood fantasies of whatever heroic adventure you want to go on. Those are fantastic ways of using lucid dreaming as well. Although, one caveat there, you will likely be swept up in the drama if it's very emotive content. So the more emotive the content is, in my experience and what I've read, the harder it is to stay lucid once you're there. So you can counteract that. You just have to be really clicked into your senses, and you have to remember vividly, this is a dream. That's what's happening right now, is it's a dream. And once you can do that, and once you can really lock in, you can kind of do whatever you want in terms of the fantasy realm. But it definitely will get strange quickly, and you might get swept up in the drama. So be on the lookout for that. Strike that balance. After that, nightmares. This one's really important because a lot of people get into lucid dreaming because they're having nightmares. It's a fantastic way to resolve those. Once you become aware that you're dreaming, then there's no sense in having the nightmare anymore. You're not going to deliberately torture yourself. At least I wouldn't do that. Maybe you would, but hopefully not. If you're having a nightmare, most people, the first thing they do with their nightmare, let's say they're being chased by like a giant lion bear that is breathing fire on them. Something just insanely comical. What most people will do is they'll turn around and they'll like shoot a bazooka at it or something. Like just do something crazy, or they like punch it out of the sky. Like something usually aggressive and retaliatory. And do that if you want, by all means. It's actually can be kind of encouraging to your confidence to fight back against a monster and beat it. But after a while, if you're having nightmares continuously, what I would recommend is actually taking a different approach. Instead of attacking the monster, what you can do is engage it and actually just yell at it and say something, or just talk to it and say something like, why are you here? Like, how can I help you? And it might sound a little odd, but very often these monsters will stop and they'll look at you, and then they'll communicate, and they might transform before your eyes into something benevolent or funny. It's really common for people to have that dream experience with nightmares, and I've done that a lot, and those are the best dreams. Some of the best dreams I've ever had have been nightmares that turned into beautiful dreams because I confronted whatever scary thing was happening in a way that was less retaliatory and more loving and open and inquiring, and I've been rewarded for that, and I expect you would be as well. After nightmares, we have problem solving. A famous example, Thomas Edison used to have this reclining chair, and he would have ball bearings in his hands, and he'd be, laying down, and as he would fall asleep, he would drop the balls, and they would clang into pans on the ground. And then when that would happen, he would snap awake, and then he'd write down whatever was in his mind at that point. And he would do this process repeatedly, spurring all kinds of imagination and all kinds of creative dots connecting in his mind. That was just brilliant to his creative process. Very useful. And so that's It's not quite lucid dreaming, but it's close. It's called liminal dreaming. Look that up if you're interested. It's similar in some ways. But that's the kind of thing you can do with lucid dreaming, is you prompt the mind to connect new creative solutions to things that you are having trouble thinking of consciously in your waking life. Another man named August Kekule, pardon my pronunciation, German guy, I think. He came up with the structure for the benzene ring, which is a compound in organic chemistry that's useful for all sorts of industrial materials and whatnot. He came up with that because he had a dream of a snake like eating its own tail. And so he was able to translate that symbolism into the actual structure of what the benzene ring is, which is this fascinating double bind ring of carbon atoms. And I'm probably doing a poor job of explaining that properly, but look that up. It's also very interesting. So those are problem-solving things you can do. You can also use them for interpersonal problem-solving. I had this dream in high school where me and my girlfriend at the time were having, difficulties dealing with each other, and as happens in high school. And I had this dream where we were running in this Italian market, and she turns to me and she says something like, "You know why we're having this problem, right?" And I was like, "No, I have no idea. Tell me why." And then she said, I have no idea what she said at this point, because I forgot it, because I didn't write it down. But the next day I remembered it sufficiently to take it into our conversation the next day and resolved whatever problems we were having at that time, and it worked out for a little while. But had I written them down, I'd be able to tell you, and I'd be able to remember that. But yeah, you can totally use your lucid dreams for resolving interpersonal conflicts with you and people close to you in your life. At least helping you make sense of them in your own mind. Sometimes the answer is much closer than we think it is, and it can be really gratifying to have that experience. So rehearsal is another thing you can do with lucid dreaming. Rehearsal is kind of like visualization, which a lot of sports experts, athletes will do. A lot of people who perform or present in front of large groups, they'll use rehearsal, and they will use a mental state of mind to practice what it's like to succeed in these realms and master the subtleties of their art form. You can do that in your lucid dreams, except you can do it with all 5 senses, which is a hell of a lot more powerful, I would say. So definitely check that out if you get the chance in your lucid dreams. That's a really good use of them as well. If you're going to do that, dream incubation is a really good skill, both for the problem solving and for the rehearsal. Dream incubation is more or less priming the mind for that. So if you want to, you're going to go into your pre-sleep routine. You're going to very clearly map out what you're doing in your mind, what you want to be the case. So let's say you have your problem you're working on, you have your quandary, and you can write about it, you can draw about it, you can just get the unconscious mind to start churning a little bit by feeding into it, and then go to sleep right after that. And you can do this in between sleep cycles, like you're doing the wake back to sleep method, and very likely your dreams will feed into that content. You don't even have to be lucid to benefit from that. You could just have a dream, and then the dream can answer it when you wake up. But if you're lucid, you can actually just, ask the dream pretty straightforward, what's going on here, and how can I address this issue? And it might tell you, and it might tell you something really, really useful. The last thing you can do with lucid dreaming is 2 sides of the same coin. I consider it. It is spiritual transformation and self-therapy. Now, maybe call me a reductionist, but I really do see those two as the same thing. If you address your personal relationship with you and the world around you and your loved ones and your past and your ideal future, that's your self-therapy, and that's going to create more spiritual potency. And if you have more spiritual transformative experiences where you're connecting with the essence of who you are and what it truly means to feel love and to feel acceptance and to be part of this wild universe of ours, then that will translate into your psychological health. I really do see those as kind of just different ways of explaining the same phenomenon, but that's my take on it. So the best way to do that, in my findings and in what I've read, is to go into the dream and engage characters in the dream, asking them questions. It can really be that simple. Just go up to a character in the dream and ask them whatever you want to know. Ask them about your life, your future, your past. Ask them about things you need to be more aware of. You can actually just ask the dream out loud. Just yell, "Show me what I need to see right now." And that can be that can be pretty illuminating too. The dream will just transform before your eyes and give you an output, and sometimes it's not what you would expect. I had this one dream one time where I'll tell a dream story. I was on a hill and I was playing a didgeridoo, as I was doing a lot at that time, and there were elephants. There's a bunch of white elephants in the canyon, and they all lifted their trunks up and started playing into the air. So I was like, oh, I'll do the same thing, and I started, playing with them in the air. And a car, kind of like from Harry Potter, a flying car, appeared in the distance, and then came all the way around and then parked right in front of me. And it kind of looked like my old, beat up Honda Accord that I had in high school, except it had a red door, and inside it there's a man in his 30s, and he's completely clean, bald head, kind of looked like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of Jason Statham or whoever, but little softer facial features. And he gets out of the car, and I forget the first thing he said, but we started talking about all kinds of things. I started asking him questions, and I remember asking him, he was giving me all sorts of interesting answers about deeper questions I had, and I asked him about psychedelics because I was kind of having a crisis with those at the time, wondering if I should just scrap them in my life, because I was starting to have some issues with them about their lack of health on my mental well-being, as people can relate to, I'm sure. And he told me something like, yeah, you probably don't need to do those anymore. They're really just a distraction at this point. And that kind of dropped a bomb in my mind. I didn't expect that kind of answer from him. And that alone kind of to this day has had ripple effects of how I look at them. Is not so much bad for me or good for me or bad or good for anybody, but really just a tool that is useful in certain circumstances and is not useful in other circumstances. And so since then I have readdressed their relationship to my life in a lot of ways. And then the ending of the dream was he told me he would check back in with me in 20,000 years to see how I was doing. And I was very confused, and I said, there's no way I'm going to live that long. What are you talking about? And he said, oh no, you're going to live for 100 million years. You'll see. Don't worry. So this is just, we'll have our next check-in then. So we'll see how that part goes. All right. So we've talked about how to get lucid, what to do when you're lucid. We talked about staying lucid, all the different techniques to get you there. Before we wrap up, I do want to talk about dangers of lucid dreaming. Which might sound kind of silly, but it's real. There's some things that can and do happen to people very often, which can actually scare people off of lucid dreaming. And I think that most of them, if not all of them, are either totally manageable or not really problems in the first place if we just approach them properly. The first one is the big one, which is sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is your body, when you dream, you go into what's called an atonic state, where your body is more or less paralyzed other than the very crucial organs like your eyes, your lungs, your heart, things that need to keep moving. But your arms, your legs, your throat, your face, pretty much everything else that you use consciously goes into paralysis so that you don't act out your dreams in your sleep, which is very good for the world around you, so you're not just breaking through walls and whatnot. But sometimes you'll wake up from a dream, especially if it's a scary dream, and you'll still be in that atonic state. So your mind will be awake, your body will be asleep. And most people in that state of mind are fucking terrified because you can't move and you're still kind of half asleep and you might still be dreaming a bit. And so it's horrible, and people freak out and they might hallucinate monsters trying to attack them. And if you ever heard of an incubus or a succubus, there's the male female equivalents of each other. That's basically, it's theorized this is where the ideas come from, is people in sleep paralysis having these experiences of being assaulted by these monsters while they can't move. And so sleep paralysis is that phenomenon resulting in people freaking out, and usually you'll scream in your head and you'll report it as being one of the most terrifying things that has ever happened to you. You might be a little traumatized from that, and then eventually you'll just come out of it and then you'll move around and you'll inhale deeply, and then it's not something that's fun. But bad news, this happens more if you get into lucid dreaming. But good news, if you know what it is while it's happening, then you can actually transmute it into a gift from the dream gods. Because if you wake up and you're in sleep paralysis, the hardest part of lucid dreaming is now over. The hardest part is keeping your mind awake and keeping your body asleep. If you can do that, then you're in. So keeping your mind awake, at that point, all you have to do is just breathe, relax, and visualize. If you wake up and you're in a state of sleep paralysis, just know a demon's not trying to eat me. I am just in sleep paralysis, which means that the hard part is over and I can just go straight into a dream. And you can emerge into a dream straight from that state and you'll be lucid right out of the get-go. And whew, that's the way to do it. That's the best dreams that I've ever had, for sure, is going from sleep paralysis straight into a dream, because that's the beginning of the dream. You get the entire length of the REM period to just play and have fun and see what happens after that. So that's a huge one on sleep paralysis. It can be the worst thing that has ever happened to someone in a lot of ways, at least, experientially. It can be pretty horrendous, but if you know what it is, it can actually be one of the best things that could ever happen to you. So it's a beautiful two-sided coin in that. There's a book on that later that I'll plug. Another danger is what I call overstretching the mind. Overstretching the mind is basically the experience of having too many wonderfully psychologically expansive experiences in too short of a time period. If you've ever gone to a lot of music festivals or done too much traveling or too many psychedelics or things like that, where your mind is just getting pushed into all these crazy directions, it can be really ungrounding. You can feel kind of a loss of stability and a loss of who you think you are, and a loss of linear focus on your life. It can feel like your life is just too many moving parts all at once, and that's not very good. So lucid dreaming can definitely add to that if you're having a lot of them in a row. The metaphor I like to use is like a hot yoga class. It's very easy to be overly and unusually flexible in this environment, much like in a hot yoga class. And I like that metaphor because the prescription is the same. If you're in a hot yoga class and you don't want to be too flexible, you need to make sure your strength is very consciously focused upon, because you want to keep that part in good balance. And you need to just proceed cautiously. If you find new space, then don't just flop into it. You want to, enter with a keen awareness of, oh, this is new. I better proceed wisely and gently, and not just push my way through because I really want my toes to touch, my third eye, for the reasons you might want to do that. Lucid dreaming is the same thing. Things get very strange in there. It can be really mentally expansive and completely almost unintelligible to the outside world. So I would go in there, make sure that you're fully grounded, and make sure that you are proceeding with caution. If you're trying to stay grounded in your dreaming world, developing your psychic strength, if you will, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and STOIC philosophy, those two are actually kind of more or less the same thing. At least the roots of CBT come from Stoicism pretty explicitly. Study those, because those will give you a lot of tools to not fall into that rabbit hole chasm of losing your sense of self to the tidal waves of wacky dream territory wonderland, because it can get pretty nuts in there. And so definitely make sure your legs are firmly on the ground when you're going into your dream states, and CBT and Stoicism will help with that. Another problem that happens a lot to people is mixing up their dreams with their waking life, like conversations you've had or experiences you've had. You might actually think that something happened in real life that was just a dream, and vice versa. That can be disconcerting. A lot of people don't like that. A lot of people will be confused when you're referencing conversations that you had with them on Mars, and they're like, we never went to Mars. And you said, oh, that was a dream. Probably should have kept those separate. The way to avoid that is to keep journaling. A lot of people, when they get into lucid dreaming, especially when their recall is incredible, they stop journaling because it takes time, and it's seemingly unnecessary because their recall is on point. But keep doing that, because that'll keep these two realms distinct. You don't want them to blur unless you actually want them to blur. You don't want them to blur on accident, because that can really throw off your comfort in moving around this world and keeping your mind appropriately situated to the environment around you. If you're adding memories to things that weren't also experienced by the people around you, then it can get really confusing really fast. Number 4, your preconceptions about what dreaming is and who you are and what dream characters mean, those will get shattered. This is not so much a danger, but more of just a thing you should expect. Your preconceptions about what the dreaming space is are probably going to get knocked around a lot. That mine did and still are. What I think dreaming is, what I thought dreaming was, did not last very long at all. I really don't think that dreaming is even remotely well understood in our culture. It's such a strange and completely unprecedented phenomenon in terms of our mapping it out clearly, and that will, I expect, will be your experience as well. It's lonely. Lucid dreaming can be kind of lonely because our culture doesn't really honor dreams the way that it could, and there are meetups, lucid dreaming meetups. I'm going to be starting one myself. There are websites, there are gatherings for that. Meditation groups tend to have people interested in dreams and whatnot. But lucid dreaming is very often it's a pretty one-man sport or one-woman sport, and it's something that you'll need to develop a sense of intrepid individualism for, because it's going to be hard for people to relate to this. But if you find people that are into it, then you're going to really like them because they'll be equally as interested and as adept, and you could just really nerd out on it. But chances are you're going to feel a little isolated, at least in our modern world. But if you can find a group of people that are into it, or if you can even just get a recruit, someone else who that might be interested, see if you can buddy up, find people to help you with this practice, because it's such a beautiful thing to share, but it's hard to find people that are willing to dedicate hours and hours of their life every single day, not hours every single day, but a good chunk of time every single day to transforming their mind from the inside out while apparently sleeping their life away. It's pretty rare to find that level of discipline in our culture, and I don't blame them, because sometimes it takes a minute to get the fruits from this, and we like our instant gratification, and lucid dreaming does not always get you that because it takes a lot of time. One last thing I'll say, not a danger, just me on a hobby horse. Dream interpretation. If you think you know what a dream means and it's not your dream, keep it to yourself unless the person explicitly asks you. Or unless you ask them, do you want me to tell you what this dream might mean to me from this perspective currently? Like, dream interpretation it's not a science, and it's not very well understood at all, even by the experts. There's a lot of crack pottery going on there. If you really want to know what a dream means, I tell you the best way to find out: get lucid and go ask the dream, because that'll tell you something at very least very interesting, if not just the actual answer you want. But if you are just going off of your half-baked Freudian hypotheses, you're going to end up hitting a lot of walls and rubbing a lot of people the wrong way, including your own self. And I'm not to say this, I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. It's not that there's no validity in dream interpretation, but it's such a fraught territory with over-theorizing and rationalization that I just pour salt all over that whenever I hear people telling me confidently what dreams mean, especially when they're not their own dreams. It's like, chill out, go ask the dream, see what it thinks, because these things are much stranger than we give them credit for. So there's my rant. Have fun with that one. Resources. Ooh, here's the fun part. All of these resources I have known and loved. Here is the first one to get into: Exploring the World of Lucid Dreams by Stephen LaBerge. All these will be linked down below. I'm not paid to promote any of these, but I'd sure like to be. This is the first book to read for sure. It is chronicling a PhD student who back in the late 70s and early 80s got into lucid dreaming, started studying it, validated it scientifically for the first time in ever that we knew of in the West. Most people would just dismiss lucid dreaming as some alleged BS phenomenon, like, oh, you just think you were aware, which doesn't even make sense. But he validated it scientifically using eye patterns. It's a really fascinating story, and also the book is just this massive compendium of strategies and techniques. Everything I've mentioned in here is out of that book, or at least most of it, and a lot more. So definitely check that out. That is the place to start. I would not recommend anything else first. After you read that, this one, Gateway to the Inner Self by Robert Wagner, is, I would say, a great sequel. This kind of assumes that you've already read that book, you've already had some success with lucid dreaming, and you're ready for maybe what you call more advanced perspectives, techniques, and mindsets. That is another great one to go into after that. It's a little headier, but can't go wrong. It's fantastic. I don't have another copy of this next book, Ryan Hurd's Sleep Paralysis. So that book is a history and phenomenology and theory behind sleep paralysis, what's happening, why it's happening, what humans have tried to do with it in the past, and all of that information. So if you find yourself having sleep paralysis, having a lot of it, get into that book. That'll ease your heart and your mind for sure. And it's also, Ryan Hurd has all kinds of great books. Oh, Robert Wagner also has the Lucid Dreaming Experience magazine that I mentioned earlier. Reading stuff like this is really good in between your sleep cycles. If you're doing your wake back to sleep method, I would highly recommend that because that primes your dream immediately. And that magazine's also full of, it has articles, it has ideas about dreaming and about the future gatherings for dreams and things like that, and also just a lot of dream accounts from people who are sending them in, and he puts them in the back. They're really fun. It's a lot of inspiration in there. The last resource that I'll plug as a book is this one, which is one of my favorite books in the entire universe, The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche. This one is about Tibetan Buddhism in relation to death and consciousness and what it means to be alive in this samsaric universe of pain and pleasure of ours. It's very light reading, of course. It's a fantastic book. It will change the way you look at your life in a million ways. At least if you absorb its messages, it'll shake things up for you in a way that I can't even begin to describe. It's really, really beautiful book. I would put it on my top 3 list, hands down, no question. It changes everything. And there's a chunk in there about dream yoga, which is the esoteric Tibetan Buddhist practice of lucid dreaming, which goes much, much deeper than kind of anything else I've found in terms of what it's for and what it's prepping you for. I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but it's basically, it'll teach you how to die consciously, which is a hell of a thing to practice. And what better use of our time than to learn to transition to the next dimension, assuming there is one, with grace and with focus and with compassion for ourselves and the world. And then the very last thing, the movie Waking Life is my favorite movie. It's all about lucid dreaming and all about, it's about lucid dreaming, but it's also just like a dream. And it's this insanely awesome animation style, really, really fun conversations in there. I will watch it a million times more in my life and won't be able to extract everything I need to out of it. Definitely check that out if you want to see some things that I've mentioned here kind of put into more of an artistic context. That movie will be a great place for you to go as well. So that's the Lucid Dreaming Firehose. That's hopefully everything that you really need to get started. I will have notes all in the description, PDFs describing all this in a much more linear way. This was quite a fire hose in the sense of it was a lot of water going in a lot of directions, but hopefully it was linear enough for you to follow. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'll be making more videos on related topics, bonus topics about lucid dreaming, one on sleep hygiene, one on why we have this premature reanimation response and how to not feel so shameful about it. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have incredible dreams. Leave any questions, comments you have below, like, subscribe, notification bell, all that good stuff. You know what to do. Thank you for your time and sweet dreams. See you then.